According to Mike Coppinger, Robert Garcia will train Anthony Joshua in the UK for the heavyweight title rematch between Alexander Usyk versus Alexander Usyk in Saudi Arabia on July 23rd. And this is, again, according to Coppinger via ESPN. Garcia, an ex-champ and trainer of the year, is revered for his game plans. AJ was trained by Rob McCracken since his pro debut. As you can see, this is all in Coppinger's tweet. He also said, "Love this move for AJ. Garcia will surely work with him on being the big man and using some roughhouse tactics. Besides the job he's done with his brother Mikey, he's done great work with Jose Ramirez, Brandon Rios, and a host of others. One of the best in the game." And I can just pull up a picture here of AJ with Robert Garcia. And the first thing I noticed when I looked at this picture, other than the huge height disparity between the two of them, I'm wondering whether Robert Garcia is going to need to borrow Adam Booth's platform shoes that he wore when he trained David Haye for the Valor fight, because he's going to struggle holding the pads up, isn't he? For AJ, who's a lot taller. But also the look in AJ's eyes. AJ has that eye of the tiger look here. Haven't seen that for a long time with him. Maybe it was that confrontation he had with those little nerd students at Loughborough University that did it. Whatever the case may be, hooking up with Robert Garcia, I'm assuming that this is going to be, lead trainer, assistant trainer type situation rather than two lead trainers, because that can get a bit confusing for the fighter. AJ's working with Angel Fernandez as well. So will Garcia be the main guy and then Fernandez be the assistant, or will it be the other way around? If any of you have got any info on that, drop it in the comment section below. I'll be very interested to find out. Now, Garcia's fighters are normally aggressive. They aren't always volume punchers. Obviously, Brandon Rios was a volume puncher and he had literally no defense at all. But Mikey Garcia, Robert's brother, never was a volume puncher. He was always a guy who would apply pressure, yes, but it was educated pressure. There was a lot of front foot counter punching going on. It was a little similar to an Andy Ruiz, for example. That's kind of what Mikey Garcia did, obviously at a higher level in terms of skill, but a similar kind of approach to an Andy Ruiz, where he just gets right up on you, intimidates you into throwing to keep him off, and then he counters real fast shots. An example of that would be the Adrian Broner fight, if you guys remember when Mikey Garcia fought Adrian Broner. So, yeah, that is what Robert Garcia fighters typically do. They typically apply pressure. So I guess it makes sense that AJ's working with Garcia here. Maybe he can teach him some little tips and tricks and what have you. But really, AJ's going to need to toughen up. That's the main thing. Irrespective of what Robert Garcia teaches him, AJ's going to need to go in there with a Spartan mindset that no matter what happens in the ring, whether he gets hurt, dropped, whatever, he cannot deviate from the mission. He must hit and he must hurt and he must do damage to Alexander Usyk. He can't go out there thinking, and I'm going to be cute and technical and all that kind of stuff, because that didn't work last time. And he can't go in there getting intimidated if he gets hurt or if he gets dropped. He's just got to keep pushing through. And this is, of course, problematic for AJ because he hasn't shown the best powers of recovery. In fact, his powers of recovery have seemed quite poor over the course of his career. He did recover, I want to say, after a couple rounds against Dylan White when he got hurt with that left hook. Against Klitschko, he took more rounds to recover, and it obviously wasn't just the fact that he'd been hurt, but he was also tired because he punched himself out in the fifth and he got hit with some big shots in the fifth as well, and then dropped in the sixth, and he was tired by that point. So it took him several rounds to regroup and recover, and he finally was able to mount an attack that took Klitschko out in the 11th round. Against Andy Ruiz in the first fight, he gets hurt in the third round, hurt dropped, and he doesn't recover for the rest of the fight. He's unable to shake the cobwebs. He's groggy for the remainder of that bout. And of course, he loses in the 7th. And against Alexander Usyk, he gets rocked in the fight. I don't want to say that it took him a long time to recover in terms of shaking the cobwebs from that punch, but he seemed intimidated for a while. He seemed concerned about being hit after he got rocked in one of those early rounds against Alexander Usyk. So this is a guy who doesn't have the greatest chin and doesn't have the greatest powers of recovery. With that being said, I'm not saying AJ has the worst chin in the heavyweight division. At this stage, I think you could make a strong argument that he's got a better chin than Dillian Whyte. Yeah, Dillian Whyte is out here getting knocked out by one punch from Fury, one punch from Povetkin, and these were instances where Whyte wasn't taking any other punishment, really. I mean, yeah, he took a few shots from Fury, but he wasn't getting hurt and beat up prior to the one-punch knockout, was he? It's not like Fury had completely broken him down, and nah. Dillian Whyte, the perception I had is that Dillian Whyte's head was still relatively fresh when he got caught with the uppercut from Fury, but that's it. He got taken out with one shot. The same thing against Povetkin. He hadn't been taking loads of punishment off Povetkin. It was one shot, and that was it. Lights out. And of course, AJ knocked him out. But, you know, the AJ fight was different because he took a lot more punishment in the AJ fight than he did against Fury or Povetkin. And he appeared to have much better punch resistance back then. So, yeah. Anyway, without going too much into the Dillian Whyte punch resistance situation, if you compare AJ when he fought Povetkin to Whyte when he fought Povetkin, AJ appeared to take Povetkin's punches better. Yeah, he took some of those big hooks and uppercuts off Alexander Povetkin. Go back and watch the fight. Yeah, he got rocked. His knees buckled in the first round from some big Povetkin shots on his chin. But he didn't go down, you know? So while AJ doesn't have a particularly good chin, there are worse chins in the heavyweight division for my money than AJ's chin. I think, you know, AJ is one of these guys who gets hurt and he'll go down, but he's not someone, as far as we've seen so far, that is completely out of it to the point where, you know, they can't get off the canvas like Dillian Whyte. When he got dropped by Klitschko, that was a hell of a shot, but he got up. Nobody's been able to keep AJ on the canvas. He just finds it difficult to shake the grogginess out of his head. That's the thing. He even saw some combat veteran, I think in the run-up to the first Ruiz fight, to try and get advice on what to do when he's been buzzed. And I thought that was a strange thing for AJ to be doing, getting a combat veteran in. And, you know, because combat veterans, of course, have big explosions go off around them and gunfire and all this kind of thing. And you have to be able to, you know, keep your wits about you and shake off any feelings of shock, or when you're disoriented from an explosion near you, you have to be able to shake that all off and remain focused on your task. But how that equates to boxing, I mean, does it really, isn't it just better talking to a boxer? Do you need to get a combat veteran in? You're not going to hear explosions in a boxing ring. Do you know what I mean, maybe it equates, I don't know. But I just found that strange because, of course, AJ was unable to recover in the Ruiz fight. So whatever that combat veteran told him, it didn't work. You know, the proof is in the pudding. It didn't work in that fight. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below about AJ hooking up with Robert Garcia. Do you think this is a good fit? Do you think that he should have gone with somebody else? And if so, who? Maybe some of you think a guy like Shane McGuigan. You got Adam Booth out there. You got a host of American trainers, Eddie Reynoso, although he's not exactly flavor of the month at the moment. His fighters have been losing. Yeah, just let me know what you think in the comments below. Personally, I think it makes sense. I don't know whether it will be enough. In fact, I don't know whether any trainer would be enough, you know, in and of themselves, because a lot of this is down to AJ doing the work in his own mind. It's not just a technical thing. It's about getting AJ's mind right. He has to be willing to walk through fire to beat Alexander Usyk. He has to be willing to do whatever it takes to get his big shots on, you know? So I don't know how much a trainer can really help. I mean, they can put him in a certain environment, but not every trainer is a Customado in terms of psychology. Customado was a guy who would get into his fighters' heads. That's really where Cus excelled, I would say more so than his boxing style, because Customado's boxing style was a very difficult style to master. That's why since Customado passed away, there's really nobody that's been successful with that style. You might be able to say Vinny Pazienza, but his style wasn't really, out and out Customado. He did a lot of boxing as well when he was working with Kevin Rooney. But yeah, since Cus passed, obviously the Rooney when he worked with Tyson, but I include Rooney in the whole Customado setup. I guess Teddy Atlas did some work with Povetkin and, had a little bit of an influence on him. But there's been nobody with a pure Customado style since Mike Tyson, really, that's had any success in boxing. Yeah. That peekaboo where the head movement isn't typical head movement. It's like a metronome. That's how D'Amato fighters would move their heads. They would fight out of a crouch a lot of the time, yes, but it'd also stand straight up and move their head side to side like a metronome. Very unusual style of head movement. You don't really see that with any other style. So, yeah, I think that D'Amato, the D'Amato style was very difficult to master. So you can argue how good that style really is. Obviously, it worked great for Mike Tyson. Jose Torres had success with it, Floyd Patterson, but not really no other fighters other than them had success with that style. But more than anything for me, D'Amato was a fantastic boxing psychologist. He understood what made fighters tick. He understood what they needed. He could look at a guy like Floyd Patterson, who was not naturally confident, even less so than Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was kind of a mixed bag psychologically. He was obviously traumatized, and there was a shy side to his personality, but there was also a vicious side to his person, a real vicious side to Mike Tyson's personality, being a street kid and coming from the very, very tough environment that was Brownsville, Brooklyn in the 70s and early 80s. And Customado was able to harness that viciousness in Mike Tyson and turn him into an absolute, monster in the ring. Obviously, D'Amato died before Tyson won the title, but he left his legacy and he left Rooney in place and Jacobs and so on, Caton, to make sure that Tyson got to his goal. And of course, he left enough in Mike Tyson's mind to make sure he got to his goal. So yeah, for me, D'Amato was really a fantastic psychologist in boxing. And he did the same with Floyd Patterson. Patterson, as I say, shy guy. D'Amato instilled a lot of confidence in him and he built him up gradually, of course. So is Robert Garcia going to be able to have that same effect on Anthony Joshua? Is he a psychologist as well as a fighter? Because if you hear even Mike Tyson talk about training fighters, he's reluctant to train fighters because he says it's not as simple as just showing them some moves and being with them in the gym. You got to be everything. You got to be their best friend. You got to be their confidant. You got to be their psychologist, right? Their psychiatrist, their shrink. That's what Mike Tyson said about being a trainer. And that's because that's exactly what Customado was for him. You see, whereas a lot of other trainers, they don't go that deep. They might do a little bit of psychology with it, but not that much. Whereas with Customado, it was really like the military, That's how D'Amato would train his fighters. Mike Tyson described D'Amato, or he described his relationship with D'Amato. He said he was like, at one point, Customado's dog. That's how well D'Amato had him trained. Where if D'Amato said bite, Tyson would bite. It's an ironic thing that Mike Tyson used that particular wording. But yeah, D'Amato, master of boxing psychology. Can Robert Garcia get into Anthony Joshua's head and get him into the right mindset to beat Alexander Usyk in this rematch? You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below.